Welcome back to the coffee show, everyone. We're in Jakarta, podcast 2 of our, Jakarta tour on this leg. I'm
tour.
joined by Aston Utan, one of the founders here at Common Grounds Coffee. Welcome to the show, Aston Utan.
Thank you, Kirk. It's exciting to be here as a, wannabe podcaster. Yeah, I've heard I've listened to a few of your shows, so it's nice to become a guest this time around. And welcome to Jakarta, maybe one of the most unpopular cities in the world, but becoming very popular for coffee.
Right. Well, I would have to agree with you there. Not unpopular in, a number sense, because there's, what, is it 30 to 40 million people here or something?
I think it's about 28, 29 now.
Okay.
Yeah, that's something. And that's like in the center, like not the suburbs, right? So that's even more.
Okay,
yeah.
Because that's the entire population of Australia.
Yeah,
so,
pretty much.
You're definitely popular. Don't worry. There's definitely plenty of people here. But it's interesting, you remarked before the podcast started that you don't often get as many visitors here. Like it's not as much of a tourist city, so to speak, as other parts of Indonesia.
Yeah.
So we're in one of your venues now, one of your many venues, and you've got. I just bumped in and saw one of my old colleagues, Shinsaku Fukuyama, back there making some coffees.
Yep, Shin is here. He's an old friend, friend of Saint Ali as well. This time though, he's kind of transitioned from latte art, I'm assuming, right? Like most baristas tend to do, and now he's brewing coffee and he's developing his own brand over there in Osaka.
Well, we had he brewed a coffee from Finca Iris, so one of the premier farms in Panama now, and I'm assuming that's what he made you. Tasting excellent, idea. But it's probably the best thing he's got on there at the moment. And it's tasting unbelievable. But yeah, the vibe around Jakarta this week is excellent.
The energy, the energy is amazing. Us at Common Grounds, the team, we've been preparing for World of Coffee for I think 2 or 3 months now, and it's all really culminating to. I guess it pretty much started like 2 or 3 days ago. Like people started coming in, coffee professionals, SCA members, judges, things like that. So like you said before, it's I'm so excited for this week to happen because we rarely get a lot of tourists, right? Outside international tourists. So the energy is different, right? And people you see more faces that are open to new things, right? New cafes, new cities, new coffees, new faces. So it's definitely a nice change from the usual.
Well, whenever I think of specialty coffee in Indonesia, Common Grounds is always the first venue or the first business that pops into my mind. It's like, if you're going to Jakarta, Common Grounds is the one. So,
appreciate it.
So you're one of the 3 founders of Common Grounds?
4, actually.
4.
Yeah,
so,
4.
So yourself, Joshua, Daryanto, and
Philip.
Philip.
Yeah, Philip's more behind the scenes, though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but between yourself, Joshua, and Daryanto, I'm going to interview all of you this week because you've all done interesting pivots in your life. But I won't spoil theirs. We'll focus on you today. So, what's your main occupation nowadays, I guess?
Well, the fancy title is CEO, right? The unfancy title is a little bit of everything and everything else. But most of my focus now is more on the retail side of the business and also in terms of branding. I guess when we first started out, we've already had a unique way of managing our partnership. It's always been, in a way, like divide and conquer. So we all came to the table with different skill sets and different strengths and weaknesses, and we kind of positioned ourselves to each advantage, right? And sort of like trust each other with the other side of the business. So when we started out, I was always into the marketing side because that's where my sort of professional background is and experience. Daryanto always had family business and history in coffee, like green coffee, trading. So he's definitely more of the wholesale guy. Joshua, when he started, had a finance background. So he was the first to manage our finances, from accounting to finance to investments and things like that. And then Philip had a background with distribution, right? So again, his role is more behind the scenes, while the three of us sort of were out there in terms of like more in terms of growing the business itself.
Is sometimes having that many partners obviously it can be a good thing because you can divvy up different roles to different people. Yeah. But can it sometimes be a tough thing to work with? Like you'll have an impasse and you'll all have different opinions on something, or
there are plenty of times where we just argued, right, all day long with each other. Especially me being in marketing and Joshua being in finance or accounting. I mean, it's always like a push and pull sort of thing. And the great thing about us is that we started out as mates, right? Like good friends. Joshua's my cousin, by the way.
Okay.
So we're like directly related by blood. So there's no way of separating us anyways. But Daryanto was a college friend, and so was Philip. So we've known each other for years, and we get along. But I think the great thing is when we started a business, we try not to get personal things get in the way of business. So we could literally like have a 3-hour meeting, a board meeting when we're arguing with each other. But then after the board meeting, we'd still be friends.
Yeah.
Right. We'd still be mates. We'd still hang out. Like,
well, it's part of being professional as well. And you're all probably in your 30s now. And
oh no, we're in our 40s.
Okay, right. Well, so
we started in our 30s.
even more experience behind you, and I
Correct.
guess sometimes it's.
I mean, the thing is, it doesn't always work that way. I've heard so many horror stories, right, of partnerships breaking up, or even family breaking up over money and things like that. So I just count that as one of my blessings, to be honest with you. And sometimes it's not easy as well. Like I guess in a way I'm sort of a perfectionist and a control freak, and sometimes some things would get on my nerve if something wasn't happening on that side or this side, right? But then at the end of the day, it's like, oh, you just got to trust your partner because they want the same things that you do, and you still just got to believe in that, until you take it to the grave one day, right? And I think the strength of the Common Grounds brand is this partnership of four like-minded mates, right? And we're privileged and we're grateful to be able to be in this coffee business and in the industry, and we just want to be able to be successful and move forward together.
On that, how did so you all went to university together.
Yeah.
How did coffee come into the equation?
Funny story, man. So when we first started, so Daryanto and Phil were college mates. Yoshi is a cousin, but we've known, obviously I've known all of them for a long time. However, when we graduated from uni is when we first started to sort of hang out more often and talk about things that, we wanted to do together. Right. And when that started out, actually it was kind of weird because, what had happened was my late mother was actually the person who pushed the idea to us, and that was I think in 2006.
2006.
Yeah, 2006, okay. 2007. And back then, specialty was almost nothing in Indonesia. Like there's nothing, right? And I think it was only in the early 2000s where Starbucks actually entered the market, right? So Starbucks was in maybe 5-6 years, but hadn't exploded at that time. So back then, my mom went to school in London, and she loved going back once in a while. And she came across a brand that was a local, like English brand that was very unique at that time. That was sort of like an alternative to Starbucks or a coffee chain, right? I think back then they had like Nero and they had Costa as well. This was another player, a little bit more niche, but in the same sort of lines. And she was like, oh, this is a very unique brand. I think you guys should think about doing something with this brand. And I got the boys together, and because we got on really well, we're like, oh, what could we do together? We were all working at that time as well in our different sort of roles in different companies, but we always had an itch to do something on the side, right? And back then it was like literally on the side. It wasn't like we were gonna quit our full-time jobs at that time. It was more just like, oh, if we can do something fun and and something at the same time has a lot of promise with the four of us. Why not try to build something while we're still young, and we're not attached to sort of try, right? And we actually approached them. We flew all the way to London, and
was it Monmouth Coffee? Is this where you?
No, but it was so. I don't think the company even exists now.
Okay.
So funny story, not funny, but basically when we flew over, it was like in 2007, right? Or 2006, right? And then 2008 came along. And if you remember, 2008 was a recession in Europe, right? So during that time, they went into administration.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's sad.
They went into administration and they had to sell the business. I think they sold to maybe a Middle Eastern company, took over. And when they took over, they rebranded a lot of things to make it a little bit more, less niche and more like Italian style.
Yeah, isn't it funny how, because I recall the recession really well. I've studied politics when I went to uni and I was always interested in economics in high school and those sorts of things. So, and it feels like we've just been through COVID as a global society, I guess. And it feels like there's kind of another big economic, I guess, issue on the way with, everyone's dealing with inflation in every country and the global outlook on conflict and all that sort of stuff. And it feels like there's another one on the way. Or we're already in the middle of it, technically.
I mean, I agree. I think this year, I would say, at least in our case in Indonesia, things have been a bit slower than usual. We're usually a country that sort of enjoys 5 to 6% GDP growth per year because we have a high consumption rate, we have a growing middle class, blah 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 blah, right? So usually it's been pretty good for the past few years, barring COVID. But yeah, I feel like this year there's a little bit of a pinch, and I don't think that's necessarily because of political, economic things. It could be geographical as well. But it's sort of like a whole bunch of things sort of fall into place in a bad way.
Yes.
Right. And then obviously, again, global tensions, tariffs, trades, things like that always has an effect, right, to the economy in general. Yeah.
The one thing I find interesting about the Indonesian economy is that one of the biggest parts of your economy is mining and then refining nickel, which is used in making electric cars and things like that. So your Indonesia, I think, equates for more than 50% of the world's nickel, if I'm not mistaken.
Number one producer.
You are, by a long country mile. So I just find it interesting. There's a few similarities that Indonesia has with Australia, like big mining economy and stuff like that.
Oil and gas.
Yeah, it's enormous. But of course, agriculture is one of them as well. So let's put this into a coffee context. I think Indonesia is the 4th largest coffee producer on the planet.
Yeah. And usually we're 3rd, but we've been eclipsed by Vietnam in the past few years. Yeah.
One I was interested to see that the Cup of Excellence has arrived in Indonesia now. Do you think that's been a step forward for Indonesian coffee growers?
Yeah, absolutely. So Daryanto was the first, when he became president of the association 5 years ago, one of his goals was to bring Cup of Excellence into Indonesia. In our early days of competition, when Yoshi was competing, Yanto, Yoshi would always go, right, to all of these World Coffee events. And I think that really opened our eyes, whether it's in the US, in Australia, Europe. Obviously, you would see some of the same people as well, right, or the same brands and companies. And I think one of the things that was always interesting for us was Cup of Excellence, because it's like, there's this really well-known, reputable, international coffee auction that happens around the world, but not in Indonesia, right? Which is a big coffee producing country. So that's sort of, I remember Yanto, and this was way before he was elected as a specialty coffee president or anything. I was like, hey, one day, we should definitely have this in Indonesia. I don't see why not, right? It won't be easy.
Well, like SEA, sometimes I feel like there's a lot of conjecture about the global institution that it is and a lot of criticism around it. But if I compare that with Cup of Excellence, I've never really had anyone say anything negative about it. On the whole, it's been quite a great thing for the industry, and and it's like that it's a way to quantify, quality at the highest levels in a way, in a channel to get those producers recognized. So I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I was championing it to Yanto. I was like, hey, because he's our coffee guy, right? So I was telling him, I was like, hey, this would be great for the industry, right? I mean, be great for Indonesian coffee. It'd be great for the industry, and it's reputable. That's the first thing that I was thinking. I was like, hey, these guys are really like as non-profit as it gets, as far as I knew, right?
Yes.
And then they always have a very reputable buyer list.
Yes.
Right. So the people who buy from Cup of Excellence are reputable. A lot of these companies come from Japan, who also already buy a lot of Indonesian coffee, right? So having Cup of Excellence,
you usually see the same suspects at the top of the auction list. Yeah,
right. Which is good though, right? Because it opens up better quality green to these large companies that typically buy good quality, great quality coffee.
And to give people that might just be tuning in an explainer on what the Cup of Excellence is. So basically producers in a country, it's in many different countries now, can submit their coffees. It'll be judged by a panel of, there's multiple judges, so it's cross-referenced and all those things, and they'll check its quality, they'll cup it, and then it's ranked in terms of quality from 1 to what I think it goes down to about 20.
Yeah, I think more than 20.
Yeah, probably, but it's ranked.
Yeah,
and so obviously the highest scoring lot will auction for the highest amount.
Theoretically, yes. Yeah.
Theoretically,
usually,
yes.
Yeah.
And there's different categories as well. So there's washed and natural.
Yes.
So it's kind of a competition in a specific country of who's producing the best coffee.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's also an investment for the farmers, right? So I think the first few years it was a little bit tricky to sort of, I mean, I guess in a way, don't quote me on this, but I guess you are. But basically, it was very difficult to communicate sort of the T&Cs and the rules for the farmers in the early days, right? Because it was it's a different standard to any auctions that we have locally, right? So at the same time, the farmers that wanted to join the Cup of Excellence had to know its value and had to invest in it, right? So the investment to put in your coffee into the competition was also not free, not cheap, right? And they had to make sure that they were producing the best possible green that they could produce. So that in a way already raised standards at origin level, right? Not even hitting the auction yet. Like it was already like, oh, you've got to do this, this, and this, and this, and this, right? And all of these rules and regulations are, governed by the same body, right? Around the world, globally, right? So like you said, exactly, like it puts the country's coffee on a map on a certain scoring grade point, right? Compared to not only other coffee in the same country, but also globally, right? Like a 90 points score in COE, Indonesia, with a 90 points, let's say in Guatemala somewhere, it should have similar sort of quality attributes.
Do you think Indonesia can ever be on that sort of same? To me, like if you're going to ask like the top 3 ranking, what's the consensus top 3 ranking of countries that produce the best coffee? It would look something like Panama, Colombia, Ethiopia.
Yeah,
I think those would be. You could argue. I think
Absolutely.
Brazil would be up there as well.
Absolutely.
Do you think Indonesia can ever be in that echelon?
I think it is definitely possible one day. When that day comes, I have no freaking clue.
Because I just bumped into in your cafe Gabriel Agrelli, so who's the I forget what his position is, but I think he runs Daterra Coffee in Brazil. And I think Daterra Coffee in Brazil have done more than any other coffee producer on the planet in terms of experimenting with fermentation.
Yep.
They do it in such a wide variety of ways. And if you look at a country now that probably embraces fermentation more than anyone, I would say Colombia in the specialty circles, because they're just so willing to go in places where others would not.
Yeah.
And I mean, I wonder if if the incentive was there for Indonesian coffee farmers to sort of produce coffee in that way. And I'm talking about
absolutely
fermentation, all that sort of thing.
It's happening already.
It's
happening for the past few years. So the unique thing about our industry and how fast it's grown and developed has to do a lot with the barista coffee community, right? The reason being is that as barista competitions became more popular, the message of specialty became more magnetic, if you will, and draws in more customers, draws in more business. But at the same time, I think I forget when, I think it was even before Yanto's time. I think there was a barista guild, and that barista guild was the organization that ran the barista comps, and the local specialty coffee association sort of gave them the power to run their own comps. And I think it was, I forget exact year, maybe 2015 or 2016. It was the year where in your regionals, you could only use Indonesian coffee.
Right.
So you kind of level the playing field a little because like before that, like geishas and everything started to pop up everywhere.
Yeah,
it's like,
of course.
Yeah. So basically if you had, the funds, you definitely be up there much more. Right. And during that, and I think that theme ran for a few years, maybe 5 years. So it became sort of like a rule that in regional comps, you could only use local coffee, Indonesian coffee. So that really spurred a lot of experimentation, right? Not only experimentation, but obviously, more baristas going to origin, working with farmers, and more farmers understanding the needs of specialty coffee baristas, competition-wise or not, right? And that opened so many things like crazy. And if I remember correctly, I think it was the first time that we introduced CM here
in Indonesia.
In Indonesia, if I'm not mistaken, was when we actually, so we were working together with a more of like a commercial farm in Sumatra, in the Aceh area, and basically us, Mickey, Jasin, Yanto, and a friend of ours who used to buy coffee from us, Harrison, we actually invited Jameson over.
Jameson
Savage. To teach the farm on how to do proper CM. That was the beginning of this, fermentation.
I would absolutely love to try some of that coffee. So if you have any, in Jakarta, not that specific lot, but if you got, we tried some Flores coffee, I think, from you yesterday. That was delightful.
Yeah, exactly. So since that method started was in 2017 or 17, I think. Yeah, because I think Mickey might have used some of that coffee for his run in Boston. But that's when it really started, man. And when that happened, like all other farmers started to do similar things, right? But it's basically, I would say it's more expanding the flavor profile of coffees, right? Just like, how you would how you'd have a wash coffee and then you'd explore flavors with a natural or a honey. This was another post-harvest iteration of that, right?
A question just popped up into my mind as you're explaining that. So you're drinking, I think, from Shin right now, the Finca Iris Enigma. So it's a very complex, quite sweet floral coffee, and very high graded. And I was having this discussion with my business partner Johan before we started this podcast. Is that there's a difference between a Brewer's Cup winning coffee and like a Cup of Excellence winning coffee.
Yeah.
So some people might think, oh, well, if you're going to go into the Brewer's Cup, then why not just use the Cup of Excellence winner? But like, there's a clear distinction, I feel like now, between the two. So a Cup of Excellence coffee, gets all the ticks on cleanliness and aftertaste and yada, yada, yada. Whereas a Brewer's Cup coffee nowadays is in your face. It's just like full of flavor. It's intense. And some cuppers would probably consider it defective.
Correct.
Agree? Disagree?
Yeah, agree. I think it's just different parameters, right? Different settings, different parameters. I I don't reckon one is better or worse than the other. It's just different parameters, different stages, if you will. And I think that just reflects different industry standards, and not necessarily good or bad. It's just like what people are looking for.
What's homebrewing like in Indonesia? So there's obviously like a very healthy, I guess, culture of going to cafes.
Yeah.
What's homebrewing like here?
Oh, homebrewing is I would say quite big and growing. Obviously, just like in other countries, the pandemic spurred a lot of homebrewing. But I think even before that, homebrewing was very attractive because basically you didn't have to buy a machine, so it was much more affordable, right? And again, the magnetic thing about specialty coffee is variety. I feel, right, like people didn't have to taste the same coffee every day. Like they could choose depending on their mood, or they had bought 2 or 3 different origins. So that's something very attractive to Indonesians. We are, again, just like most Asian countries, we're tea drinking by nature, right? So we don't usually typically ancestrally drink a lot of coffee. And since coffee was introduced like in more specialty, like people started wanting to explore more, but they would enjoy specialty coffee for its flavor and drinking enjoyment, not for its caffeine.
See, one thing I want to impart on people that watch this, listen to this, is that for example, I always get friends back home that say to me, what machine should I buy? What grinder should I buy? And I just wish they would give drinking filter coffee a go, because you can have a World Brewers Cup quality filter setup for the cost of an espresso machine, and you'll be able to make world-class, like the best of the best coffee at your home if you really want to. It's so much easier for filter coffee, and you can be mobile with it. You can take it camping with you. You can take it with you when you go into your mum's house, like whatever. I just think that's one of the great things about filter brewing at home.
Absolutely, right? And I think that goes down to, again, like what's the purpose of people, like coffee, right? Drinking coffee. Like a lot of people I'm assuming in the Western world or very coffee drink countries, they drink it because of the caffeine. Like they need it, right? Especially during like winter time or whatever. It's more of a necessity, right? In Asia, it's more, I feel that it's more of a me time. It's like a self-rewarding thing. It's like in a way, like for some people, it's like bubble tea, right? It's not necessarily good for you, but you want to enjoy flavors that make you feel good.
Gotta have that thing in your day.
Yeah, exactly. So I would reckon most Indonesians will probably, even nowadays, will drink just 1 cup of coffee a day.
Well, on the topic of homebrewing, we are partnering with a brand called Timor. So if you're looking for some brew gear, you can check out Timor on timor.com.au, timor.com, or one of their local distributors. Hand grinders, electric kettles. It's all available with Timor. One thing I wanted to ask you, we've got a few beautiful posters up on the wall here. Mikhail Jasin, the handsome face of Mikhail Jasin, always staring me down everywhere I go. Big part of Common Grounds.
Yes.
So you've had a relationship with him for a long time.
Yep.
Can you give us a bit of a condensed outline of his journey with you? And then I'll ask you now, before you answer that, what was it like when he won? What was the emotion for you guys like when he won the whole thing? Were you there?
Yeah, I was there. I was there in Busan. Just a little bit over a year ago with Yanto. We had the whole team over. Yoshi was there too. You know what? I mean, honestly, sometimes you still can't believe it, right? I think winning the World Barista Championship was always a dream of his and ours together. But was sort of like something that was just always so elusive. Like it's like we compete a lot, right? We've sent people to WBC and all the other comps like quite frequently. I think ever since almost every year since we started. And we still remember like the first few times going into these world comps, it's like, you see your idols, right? I still remember watching Perger to this day, the first time that he's competed, and it's still fresh in my mind, right? So there's all these things that you're just in awe of, right? And you thought that it's it's hard to grasp at. It's hard to touch because you were so far behind. I think first time Yoshi competed, he was like 20 something, 28th in the world, right? So I was like, dang, like we're so far behind, right? And I don't know how long it'll take for us to get to the top, or if we'll ever get to the top. So honestly speaking, it's just still a little bit unbelievable. I think so. Yanto, if you ever see, even now, like his phone, like his screen thing is not his wife or kids. He's got 3 kids, 1 wife, never there. Right? It's the World Barista Championship trophy, right? And he vowed to me that, you know, he would win it. The only time he would change it was if he would win it one day, right? He's won it, but it's still there. I don't know what he's doing with it.
Well, I mean, he's just cooking on it a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. So the motivation was always there. The dream was always there. The sacrifices are the ones that people don't know about, right? And the journey towards that, you know, elusive trophy that we still won by 1 point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dave.
Well, I mean, that was we did a bit of a breakdown video, myself and Rowan from Golden Brown, about it, and it's very clear why Mikhail won.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, you're always in speaking about Jack and stuff. I think he's very aware. You know, Mikhail was the better man on the day, but it's, you know, winning by 1 point's tough.
No, I mean, I'd rather lose by 10 points than 1 point.
Well, I think he's the same. It's like it'd be a bit more conclusive that way, but you know, you'd always wonder.
And I think, like, I mean, once you're on that stage, you're like if you're already, like, if you're still up there in the top 3, like, man, it can just go any way.
Yeah.
Like you really can't say, you really can't tell, and you can only know the points later on as well. So it's literally a crapshoot, and that's what we've always experienced, like ever since we've placed like better. Like it's just like, oh, it's just luck, man.
I think the judges should release the score sheets that they use. I think there's not enough transparency in judging in barista competitions for me. And how much more fun would it be if, like, and this is the perfect example of it. You got a World Barista Championship I think it's a total of 800 and something points, and there was literally 1 point in between them.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want to know? Like, although, like, there's heartbreak involved in it, I know. Jack's a good friend of mine, but the showbiz of it would just be so good if we got to see why. And so we could all scrutinize it. I mean, you can't reverse it, but so we could all criticize it. We could all be, she made the right call.
I think yes, it would be fun, but I probably wouldn't do it. And as you know, I think, you know, if you spoke to, you know, previous guests who's been a judge for a long time as well, there is always some sort of bias, right? And especially like when we're talking about like all of these competitions, barring say cup tasters, there's always like some sort of, you know, performance score, right? And that's like how like that's hard. Like it's hard to whatchamacallit, to get everybody on par with that score,
to
right?
Calibrate,
It's to calibrate. Sorry, I was looking for that word. I mean, I guess with flavor and sensory things, like you can to some degree calibrate.
But this is the thing. I'm so for promoting the showbiz side of all of this because it will bring more people to the sport.
No, absolutely.
And just that we've got to make it more entertaining because it's like if you can't enjoy. It's not like we could be there tasting a World Cup Tasters competition, but like the commentary behind it and the showbiz and the drama as well.
Yeah,
we should promote it.
Yeah, I understand what you're talking about. I think maybe they're probably just protecting their judges, right?
Yeah, but it's I think it's universally acknowledged and accepted, and it's acceptable that there's only one real way you can judge this competition, and it will always be subjective.
Yeah.
So, but we need to embrace that. And live with it. And that's something I feel like coffee could do better.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there definitely I think it would be cool to have a more entertaining aspect to it since it's so sensory, right? Like you can't taste it.
And it's so, everyone, like you see a competitor and you're like, their onstage persona is so different to their real life persona.
Yep.
And I get it. You've got to go perform and win. I would do the same.
Yeah.
But, you know, I feel like we can inject a bit more flavor into the whole thing in a variety of different ways.
Yeah.
One question I wanted to ask you, and it's really hit me once I've been in Indonesia, is that a lot of coffee shops are promoting community. So community is such a big focus. And I think it manifests in the form of, and I see this in other places like run clubs, sports activities around coffee, and some even raves are popping up. The early morning caffeine raves are popping up all across the world. And I think you guys do it particularly well as well, because you've got one of your venues over here that actually has a tennis court. Why do you promote community so much?
I mean, I think cafes are in a way like community centers, right? Like in Indonesia, we don't actually have community centers. Like there's no YMCA, there's no government like community sponsored community centers. While maybe in the Western world, you have those facilities, right? Like for certain things that you guys want to do for the community to sort of just get together. Like, I mean, we barely have any libraries, right? And all of these sort of public spaces are sort of community centers, if you will, right? And Indonesia we don't have that much of that. So a lot of these community spaces before were, I think maybe 10 years ago, the peak of it was shopping malls. We have massive shopping malls, like gigantic ones, like let's say, for example, like Chadstone is like, oh, that's a regular mall for us, right? Their malls, like they're huge here. And that's where everybody comes and mingles and does, I don't know, watch a movie, eat, whatever. Like that's a community center. And since, malls became a little bit overpopulated in Jakarta, now we have cafes, coffee shops, and restaurants. So basically, a lot of these cafes are popping up everywhere and becoming like closer to neighborhoods, and then that's where people sort of gather to have.
And there's value for you as a business promoting that as well.
Yeah, of course, right? I mean, obviously they come into the cafe, they're going to order something, right? It's coffee, it's food, it's snacks, it's iced tea, it's matcha, whatever it is. I mean, we also aim. I mean, every time I build a cafe, my thought is always as well. The number one thing is like, oh, can I make the best coffee here? Or can I beat out all my cafe competitors here? No, it's like, how can I provide benefit to the community nearby? Like my aim is always like, oh, let's say like a 3 to 4 kilometer radius. That's my community. That's my market, right? We have multiple stores here now. So, we can't sort of expect somebody from, let's say, the south side of town come all the way to the north just to have our coffee, right? We want to be closer to the community, and therefore we need to provide that space. So it's kind of leading on that whole Starbucks third space sort of thing, and I think that's still very relevant, right? In any cafe these days, like there's even how big or how small your cafe or coffee business is, there's always going to be a sense of community because it's just where people gather and people meet new people, or they meet older like friends or family or business acquaintances or partners, and that makes a community.
One thing I definitely want to ask you is, I've got 2 questions on the same subject really. What do you think has been the best addition of technology in the coffee industry, and what do you think will be the best addition in the next 10 years?
That's a good one, man. I wish I could answer that with a lot of confidence, like even both sides of the questions, but I can't. Like, it's hard to, like, there's a lot of talk on like robotics, right? Like robot baristas or arms, right? We have a few somewhere in Jakarta as well. When it's not malfunctioning, it actually does its job. But again, the human aspect of that is gone, right? And I feel like when you go to a cafe, you do still want to see a human face. You want to have a warm welcome. You want to have an interaction. And it's not always easy to maintain the same standards everywhere. But you do have some cities where it's becoming like self-serve, right? You push a button, filter coffee comes out or matcha comes out or whatever it is. So there's minimal human interaction. But I think it depends on the country and its culture and its sort of like business rush. But I would find it a bit against what I believe in coffee culture to be served by a robot or a robot hand or whatever it is. So it's hard for me to get on board with that. I would still prefer to deal with all the pains of training people to get them up to a certain hospitality standard for us.
But there must be things that, like, I would say I guess the puck press
Yeah.
has been revolutionary for coffee making in cafes across the world.
Yeah.
We use something at our cafe called Uber Milk. So
Right.
automatically frost the milk, and where we're from, just milk lattes are, it's where you make your money.
Yeah.
Would you agree? Like things like that, those little inputs that probably changed the game for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, owning multiple venues means that my number one job is not necessarily to make the tastiest coffee ever, but to have the most consistent coffee. Because a lot of having more venues means you are more convenient, right? You can be in more places at once, and having products or technology that can help with consistency, it's always good. It's always good, but I personally wouldn't call those things revolutionary. I'd call those things like, it helps improve efficiency, improves business, but it doesn't change the way we do business. Like I see technological change or innovation as like disruptors. It's like what's disrupting the industry in a positive way. And I think coffee's a little bit stuck in that sense, if you ask me. Maybe like food delivery in the past few years, like that's been changed, right? With Uber Eats and all of that. Yeah. That's like total changing the game disruptor. But coffee, even a lot of the venture-backed coffee businesses don't really introduce that much disruptive technology, if you ask me. Maybe like getting things done faster or ordering, things like that, but it's not. I don't see anything that's actually really changed the game.
Well, I wonder if there's capacity for anything to really have that disrupting effect. We'll have to wait and see. Someone smart will come up with it.
Maybe.
Who are some of your coffee idols?
Idols? Oh, I've got a lot. Are we talking about strictly coffee or coffee business or?
Well, strictly? It can be. It doesn't even have to be coffee, really. I guess. Who are some of your idols? Well,
I mean, if we that's a decent list, but let's stick to coffee because obviously I've been in this business for a while. Perger is definitely somebody that when we first started out, he was and I think at that point he was always also like very something different, right? Like a barista that you have like out of the box. He's still pretty out of the box.
Matt
right?
Perger, yeah, that's Matt Perger for all you listening at home.
Right, exactly. And our relationship with Saint Ali goes back a long time. So we've been very fortunate to know each other and have a great relationship even from now. I've tried to get him over here in Jakarta, but he's busy cooking dinner for his friends.
He does it every Wednesday. I've been to his house on occasion. He's a great cook.
Exactly. Yes. But he's always been somebody that has always amazed me in terms of the way that he thinks about coffee business and all this stuff. I've been to one of his like. He calls it a warehouse or something where he does this. It looks like it's more of like a shack with all this sort of stuff in
just
it, right?
Shit everywhere.
Yeah. But he's doing something, right? He's doing something that works, right? So, we're old friends, and I like I said, one of the biggest impacts that because that was the first time Mice, when he came in second, when Pete won, was the first Mice and World Coffee competition that we went to. So and watching him in that comp and in the final with all of the hype and the heartbreak was just that was just one of the most memorable things that happened in my coffee career. So I'll always remember that.
He's probably the most notable second place getter of World Barista Championship history. He might even be the most impactful World Barista Championship performance.
I mean, he did sell a lot of grinders after that.
Well, yeah, but like what else changed the game like that?
Absolutely.
After a comp, I can't think of one that did it quite like that.
No, it was crazy
because he from one day to the next he changed how coffee was made forever.
Absolutely, yeah, and he messed with things on stage.
Yes,
like everybody messes with things outside of the stage now, right? It's like fermentation or whatever, right? But he messed with that stuff on the stage, so he like stretched the rules like so far, like people didn't know what to do, right? And he just did his thing. Although he did win World's Brewers, right? So he did come in first place for that one a few years ago. Yeah.
I think that was the year before. If I was to put my number 2 of that category in, it would be Miki Suzuki when she came second in Korea, I think it was.
Miki's next door, by the way.
She is?
Yeah, she's setting up at Terra, but I think she'll be here later.
Okay, well, we're going to have to catch up with Miki while we're here. But she did this thing where she double ground coffee. And like, it would have been revolutionary had she won, I thought, because what she did was she froze coffee with liquid nitrogen and ground it essentially into quarters.
Yep.
And then she froze it again by pouring liquid nitrogen on, and then ground it again.
Yep.
So the particle distribution was just amazing. And I spoke to Hugh Kelly, who competed against her, and he said that was one of the best espressos he's ever had.
Yeah.
So
was it a Takesi?
It was Bolivia Las Alacitas.
Alacitas, all right.
Yeah. So, but still, like that. Those are two of the most impactful things. Then you look at Sasha and what he's done with Raspberry Candy and CM, and that's kind of changed the game as well. But I still put Matt at number one.
Yeah, He's definitely a different breed. Special human.
Got that dog in him.
Special human.
Last question I've got for you is what do you see happening for the future of coffee? So both inside Indonesia and globally, like 10 years from now, where do you think we are? What do you think's different?
I mean, coffee is so special, right? It's kind of like, I feel like it's a product that just got born again, right? I mean, it's been this brown chocolate bitter thing for so long, and now it's red, fruity, and all this other stuff, and people love it, right? So honestly, I just think that it'll continue to grow. It's got a natural drug in it as well, right? That kind of helps its case.
It's socially acceptable pretty much everywhere too.
Exactly. Now people are, like you said, partying with it, which is never thought in a million years, but it is happening. So I don't see it going anywhere. I see it growing. But again, with that growth, with that demand, with supply being as unpredictable as it is nowadays, like I expect prices to go up, man. Like I don't see any other way. I just don't. Whether it's
more people are drinking it. Supply is
pretty
varying.
Simple, yeah.
So
I just see it the only way going up, and I feel like if the quality goes up, all for it.
Yeah.
In general, right? Like if the quality goes down or stays the same and the price goes up, then I think you have a right to like sort of like, oh, what the hell, right? Yeah. But I feel like if it's going up, then it makes sense.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with all of that, and I would add as well that even though there's a lot of challenges in the coffee industry right now, and I think everyone everywhere feels that. For me, there's never really been a more exciting time to be in the coffee industry. And I've said for years that coffee's an industry that's very much in its infancy compared to like wine and tea and those sorts of things. But we're only beginning to just realize our potential. And it's good that everything is growing. There's more and more technology available all the time that's helping make coffee better. There's more resources than ever for you to go and learn about coffee. You've got James Hoffman, Lance Hendrick, Barista Hustle online.
Yep.
There's just
available knowledge out there.
Yeah, like the
free knowledge.
There's plenty out there now, and the knowledge base is growing. And even you look at someone like Christopher Hendon, who's got his own podcast, Coffee Lit Review, and also does a lot of work in the sort of academia side of coffee.
Right.
So yeah, there's more and more being discovered, and I really do think there's never been a better time to be in this industry.
I agree. I mean, barring a 100-fold matcha harvest takeover, we should be fine.
What is your take on matcha? Because I feel like I've seen more matcha being drunk here than coffee.
Absolutely, it's going crazy. It's like going wildfire across Southeast Asia. I enjoy matcha.
I'm a matcha guy too now.
Yeah, I enjoy matcha as an alternative for coffee, like maybe more in the afternoon time, right? And I know it's got a lot of great health benefits too. So yeah, great.
We went to a place called Uki Matcha the other day. Man, line that was busy. That was really busy. Yeah. And a lot of Melbourne cafes that do matcha that way are doing great.
Yeah, I would advocate for a robot arm for those kind of
cafes.
Oh
yeah, my goodness.
Yeah. Whisking is more torturous than brewing coffee.
See, personally, I enjoy it, but I know that honeymoon phase of doing that will soon end for me.
Yeah,
trying to get that foam. There's an element to it that I really enjoy.
I don't enjoy it, but I understand it. Yeah.
Got to torture yourself. Got that whisk arm.
Yeah.
I'm good at it.
I'm going to try and maybe use my left hand, right? Less dominant hand. So it has something more to do or better to do.
Yeah. No, utilize that left shoulder.
Yeah.
Get it going more. But look, you've been so generous with your time.
Absolutely.
Closing off a whole room of your cafe so that we can stop you selling coffee and doing podcasts and stuff like that.
Shin's working today, so
yeah, Shin's working. We'll go get another coffee. But thanks again for all of your help and your encouragement getting over here. We've been in contact for a few years now. I had another attempt before COVID to come and do some pop-ups with you guys, but never.
With Sub-Zero, right?
Yeah. Forgot about that.
Just before COVID,
killer. But thanks again to everyone listening and to our partners with Time More. So again, if you need some grinders, hand grinders, electric grinders, kettles, timemore.com. It's been a pleasure, Aston. Thanks so much for having us, and I'll see you at the show. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hooroo, everyone.